perspective.
Well, thanks very much, Chair, and it's a great pleasure to be here. I want to join with other speakers in thanking the Government of Maldives for their very generous and welcoming hosting of this event, and also to thank the India Foundation, RSIS, and the Foreign Service Institute of the Maldives. It's always hard to follow a session in which the major powers are talking. I was tempted to rewrite my remarks, but I'm going to give what I hope is a very Australian intervention, which is short, and I'll try and be as practical as I can. I've been invited to talk about both traditional and non-traditional security challenges, but in light of the time, I'm just going to confine myself to making a few points on changing strategic dynamics in the region, think about how the region might respond to that with a particular focus on regional architecture, and then to conclude with some examples of the contribution that Australia is making. We've heard lots of references over the last day and a half to how our region is changing, and it's very clear that we face a more contested and a more competitive Indian Ocean region, but there's been less discussion of how this competition is manifesting itself. How does this actually look on the ground and on the water, and what risks there are emerging in this more competitive era that we need to collectively manage. So a few thoughts on how this is manifesting itself. Well, we're definitely seeing the emergence of a much more genuinely multipolar region. We still have flashpoints and border disputes, and in some ways they are intensifying, and they are as tense and dangerous as anywhere in the world. Geo-Economics has become a very prominent part of the Indian Ocean region, and by using that term I mean the use of trade and investment and infrastructure, not just to deliver connectivity and promote economic growth, but also to build influence and secure national economic and political gains. We are seeing the development of strategically significant ports and military facilities across the Indian Ocean. There are now more submarines and more surface combatant naval ships from more countries in these waters. It's a pretty big ocean, so you wouldn't exactly say it's crowded out there, but clearly things are changing, and China is joining India and the United States as an Indian Ocean maritime power. And this is a good example of how things are changing so quickly, in that China's maritime presence here, now permanent in the Indian Ocean, which was touched on briefly before, is now an established part of the region's strategic landscape, and there's no turning back to a simpler era. We're also seeing both hard power and soft power being used in a battle to build influence in the region and to advance national interests. And the risks in this more competitive dynamic are also clear. We could see the emergence of an unstable regional order characterised by high levels of uncertainty. There is the ever-present risk of conflict with potentially devastating effects on economic confidence and growth. We could see a much weaker ability as a region to manage transnational challenges collectively and effectively. And for many states, perhaps, they're also finding it harder to protect their sovereignty and political and economic independence, or to paraphrase the late Lee Kuan Yew, they're finding it harder to hold on to the space to be themselves. Of course, the Indian Ocean region is not alone in grappling with this set of challenges. We see similar trends in Southeast Asia and even in the Southwest Pacific, and no single response will be sufficient. But a good starting point is to be clear about the kind of Indian Ocean region we want. What is our vision for the future? And as we do for the Indo-Pacific more generally, Australia seeks an Indian Ocean region of sovereign, independent states that are open to cooperation based on shared interests but resilient to threats to their security. We want to see a region that's open, inclusive and prosperous, and one in which the rights of all states are respected. Now, a region like this won't evolve of itself. It won't happen by accident. We will have to work for it, and we will have to work very hard for it. It means building a culture of collaboration based on strong norms and rules, and it also means standing up for those rules when they're broken. Which brings me to a couple of quick thoughts about the region's architecture. Is it up to this new era? Is it what we need to help manage these challenges? You could argue that the region's relative past tranquility and lack of homogeneity appears to have left it underprepared. Regional habits of consultation, norms and cooperation have not developed to the extent that they have elsewhere. And IORA is a good case in point. It's the apex regional organisation. It has unique convening power, a number of successive chairs and hosts, India, Australia, Indonesia, South Africa and the UAE have done well in recent years to try and lift IORA's output and sharpen its focus, but it's still largely absent on the world, perhaps even on the regional stage. And in this kind of much more complex regional environment, to focus only on uncontentious issues is to ignore a great deal that matters to the future. And you could make similar arguments about other pieces of Indian Ocean architecture, including the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium. I think we can do better than this. So here's a set of ideas, in no particular order, about some things that we could do to improve regional architecture. India's intended regional fusion centre is a good example of what can be done in an area like maritime domain awareness. So working with that fusion centre would be a useful thing for us all to do. A number of speakers have noted the recently released Asean outlook on the Indo-Pacific. Perhaps IORA could do something similar. It would be the way of IORA itself setting out the principles and norms on which it wants regional collaboration to be built. It would be easy for such an exercise to get bogged down into an argument about how to define the geographical boundaries of the Indo-Pacific. That obviously would be a waste of everyone's time. My point is, such a process could focus on norms and principles and much less on geography. There's been some talk of an IORA regional security forum, and this could be a way of ensuring much stronger and regular consideration of regional security issues. Perhaps starting that in a 1.5-track format could help promote confidence in the idea. IORA could, as an organisation, support and promote G20 standards of quality infrastructure. Applying these standards is the best way of ensuring confidence that infrastructure investment from whatever country it comes from is fit for purpose, well-built, affordable and managed on fair and transparent terms. IORA could develop and promote models for Indian Ocean economic integration. President Saleh noted yesterday the lack of inter-regional trade. And finally, IORA could help build the capability of its member states to support and apply international maritime law to disputes in the region, or international law, including international maritime law, to disputes in the region. IORA could start speaking up for the region on the global stage. Chair, I was going to make a few points about Australia's approach, but given the time, let me just quote our Foreign Minister briefly about our approach. What we seek to do in this part of the world is help build stronger regional institutions and norms that manage regional peace and security and promote openness. We want to support resilience among regional countries to withstand coercion and shape opportunities in their national interest. And we want to work with partners to protect and shape rules that promote economic growth, trade liberalisation and open markets. And I'll leave my list of things that we're doing in a practical way to support those objectives for another occasion.